Well, I get to be included in part 2. We're going to talk about relationships. Tana posted something about our relationship.
Yep.
And it did really well on her page, so I shared it. And then you had all sorts of questions about it. And so we thought we'd do part 2. If you are in a great relationship, how can you keep it great? And if you're struggling a bit, we know a lot of people that are struggling. What is it you can do today to make it better?
Well, a lot of people assume that we started off strong and just stayed strong. We should probably tell them the truth.
You mean that the first year and a half was a nightmare?
It wasn't a nightmare. He says I tortured him. I didn't torture him, per se.
I adored her, scanned her even, and she passed, and then she'd go away, and then she'd come back, and then she'd go away,
this is important.
and then she'd come back.
This is important. So yesterday I made a comment that if you don't heal from what hurt you, you bleed on people who didn't cut you. Now, I'm saying this out of experience. I also said that I did 2 years of EMDR to get past my own trauma. Because if you don't break those old patterns, those old cycles, it's really hard to move forward and have an amazing relationship. So I came from a pretty traumatic background. And as a result, I didn't trust him. I thought nobody is this nice. These were my real thoughts. No one's this nice. He's full of you-know-what. I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. I thought he was being manipulative. Anybody that nice had to be manipulative. So, because that wasn't my template. My template wasn't set for somebody that nice. So it took me almost 2 years of therapy to sort of break through my own crap, if you will. But it was really worth it. And fortunately, you were patient. In fact, he gave me the first 10 sessions of EMDR. So I'm like, oh, what kind of a gift? Like only a psychiatrist would give you 10 sessions of EMDR, basically telling you that you're messed up. But no, I mean, you really wanted me to, because you saw potential in me that I didn't even see in myself at the time. I didn't trust my own judgment. How was I going to trust someone else?
You're kind, you were helpful, you're really smart, and you didn't dismiss what I had to say. You would listen. And that is one of the most important things, that even when we weren't together, we were still best friends, and Tana was like a sponge. And you'll see as we go through this, being able to listen and not talk over each other is critical in relationships. But you said something very important, and we've been talking about it, and we will talk about over time, adverse childhood experiences. So we're actually doing this huge study at Amen Clinics on something called the ACE questionnaire, adverse childhood experiences. It's scaled or scored on a scale of 0 to 10. I had a 1 growing up, and Tana had 8.
Right.
And
so on a scale of 0 to 10, I had 8.
And what that means, if you have a score of 6 or more, you die early. You die 20 years earlier than those who have low scores. And relationships are harder for the exact reason you talked about.
Because you're always looking for the tiger around the corner. You're always looking for what's wrong. You don't trust people. It's survival. Someone said, how long have we been together? We've been together almost 17 years. So. And
so if you grew up in a hard environment, there is hope, but you have to do the work. And it's one of the things I love about Tana. She's a hard worker. You actually went to work when you were a child, in your mom's pet store. And being able to do the work is important. So what are some of the other things that made it amazing for you, besides how cute I am?
So me doing my own work. So one of the things I talked about yesterday was responsibility, taking responsibility, not blame. So I gave tips yesterday, 5 tips that have really helped our relationship because we were intentional. I talked about being intentional. I talked about responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond, not to take blame, right? It's the ability to respond and take your power back. And that was me taking my power back, me doing my part, going to therapy, fixing the parts that were making it hard for me to move forward. That's me taking responsibility for my part. But those coaching tips were good for fairly healthy individuals moving forward, right? If you're in an abusive relationship, if you are in a truly toxic relationship with someone who is a narcissist, who is a sociopath, who is physically abusing you, you got to go get those fixed. Those are brain issues. You need to have a professional help you with that. And so in my case, I was coming from a traumatic background. That was me. I still needed to go get help for that. So it's just really important to differentiate coaching from, needing to get some medical help, medical attention.
Well, and I think one of the things I did that was so helpful is I didn't pressure her. I didn't make her move faster than she was able to move.
I kept waiting for him to do that because I was like, oh, he's gonna give me an ultimatum. He's gonna pressure me, and that's gonna be my out. He was too smart for that.
Well, I knew with your brain type, if you pressure someone, they go away. And so
someone asked how old
sneaky.
I was. I started therapy when I was 37, 38. Yeah, so a couple years, and it really, really, really broke through a lot of negative patterns.
And it has just
and healed a lot of trauma.
So much.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things you talked about was special time.
You just really want to get to special time.
If you want to have a good relationship, you have to be bonded. And bonding requires two things: time, actual physical time, and a willingness to listen. If you're always talking, the other person feels invisible. So we teach something called active listening, which is when someone says something, rather than dump your opinion into the conversation, repeat it back and really listen for the feelings behind what they're saying. Massive difference. But of course, my favorite is special time.
Yeah, his favorite. So special time is something we actually teach parents. It's a parenting skill with children. If you take 20 minutes a day and you really dedicate it to just spending quality time with your child, listening, doing what they want to do, something they want to do with no commands, no questions, no nothing, just really focusing on what they want to do. But guess what? It works for husbands too, and wives. Now, the special time things that they're going to really want to do are going to be radically different. So just FYI, but it still works. The concept still works. Take that, 20, 30, 60 minutes a day to invest in your marriage. And I know sometimes when we say this, the first thing people say is, but they should do it too. So for those of you who have that brain that it's it shouldn't be one-sided, they should do it too, I'm going to challenge you. I want you to take just 2 months to stop saying that, okay, and just invest. Consider this an investment, okay, into your love account and see how much equity comes back. Then have the conversation about, letting it like you would like to have it come back to you. Because I bet you it starts to come back without you even saying it. And women are complicated. We are very complicated creatures. I think men are pretty simple. Quite frankly, I think they're pretty easy. It's you feed them, you give them affection, and they're pretty simple, right? But we are complicated.
And
our
you
hormones,
appreciate them.
And you appreciate them, right? But we are complicated because we've got hormones and we've got children and our brains are spinning and they're always working overtime. And so I think really acknowledging that we're complicated and that we can hold a grudge and that we can remember things 15 years later that are the tiniest details. So take responsibility for knowing that and go, look, I know I can be a pain with some of that stuff. And so I own that. And someone said 5 love languages. Yes, we did that. I talked about that yesterday. We talked about 5 love languages is one of the things we did. Knowing each other's love language is one of the 5 tips I listed yesterday. So yours is physical touch and quality time, or physical touch and words of affirmation.
Acts of service.
Acts of service. Mine is quality time and acts of service as well. So we are similar. It's not really gift giving for us. And so that's a really important thing to know because you might not be speaking the same language as someone. But I think women, if you understand, look, our brains are not we are busier. We think our brains are constantly spinning They are variable based on hormones. And you know that, then it helps you to just like, I know when I would be going through cycles and my monthly cycles, I'm like, look, I'm just not in the right place today to talk about this. Can we just like shelf this for today? I just need to like sort of stay away from people for the day. But I knew that about me. So rather than making everyone else suffer, it's like, let me just kind of shelf it. So know when to say things, right?
So we talked about responsibility. Empathy is a huge thing, is actually seeing a situation from the other person's point of view. Because if all you do is try to put your point of view in the relationship, the other person feels isolated, they feel distant. You want to try to often put yourself in the position of your partner. So I have a mnemonic I like called relating. So R is responsibility, E is empathy, L is listening. We talked about that. A is assertiveness. Both of us are strong people, in different ways, but when we don't like how the other person is treating us, we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And we don't talk about it meanly. No, but it's clear. Like when we're out in an event and something happens, you might say, I really didn't like when you said that.
And it's not usually intentional that they do it, right? It's how we are.
Wow. And if you assume, so if we take the A for assertiveness, also assume the best about the other person. If because of your past trauma or your past relationships, you assume the worst, it's going to set up a toxic dynamic. T is time. We talked about special time. Our I is inquire into the negative thoughts you have. We often talk about killing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that steal your happiness. Please don't believe every stupid thing you think. And I often tell Tana, please don't read my mind. I have enough trouble reading it myself.
Sorry about that.
And I think it's just such a helpful concept is we don't have a lot of ant infestations.
We don't. And part of that is our communication
but it's work.
And it's all right. So one of the tips I gave yesterday was intention. We wake up with the intention. We set our intentions. We talk about them. We talk about our goals for our relationship. So, it's really important to have that intention and to be able to, just like you said, have open communication. One of the things I want to throw in there, because I saw one of the comments, when we're talking about, like I talked about women being complicated, we have these hormonal, fluctuations and PMS and menopause and kids and all these things. So I own that, but I'm going to tell you right now, men that are watching this right now, not helpful for you to say it. Okay. So women, good for you to own it. Men, not helpful for you to go, oh, it'll all be okay in a couple days. So
actually someone said, is there a relationship book? My new book, You Happier. There's a whole section on relationship. Because if you want to be happy, you need to be getting along with people you care about.
Right.
And that goes to N, which is notice what you like about others more than what you don't like about others. And I think we're actually really good about noticing what we like.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, oh, you do this or you do that, or being negative. You want power in a relationship. Start noticing what you like.
Someone said, what if he's not good at expressing his feelings? So one thing I would say to women, don't expect your man to be like you. Now, I'm lucky I have, they're just not.
We're not wired the same.
They're not wired to. Now, I'm lucky you are a very good communicator, but you still are like too many words. It's too many words sometimes.
I know I have trouble hearing, and I got a hearing aid and I heard everything. I live in a family of 4 females, and I'm like, no, I'm not wearing these because it's like too much.
Right. So women, please get that we overwhelm men with our words. We do. So, if you want to just what I often tell, because I have a friend that I sometimes coach with this, and she'll call me and I'm like, call your girlfriends. Call your girlfriend if you want to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. call a girlfriend. Like that overwhelms most men. So have some, if you're expecting him to try to understand how you are, try to understand that just drives men crazy. And what it does is it shuts them down. They stop hearing what you're saying.
Well, especially if the man had learning problems in school,
right.
Especially if he had dyslexia or he has ADD, that just work on being concise. Mm-hmm. It can be helpful. Now, of course, it depends on your partner, but just watch. When I act this way, it works. We get what we want.
Right.
And when I act that way, that doesn't work. I mean, I know if I just started being critical of you, our relationship would go south. Mm-hmm. It's like, that would be, pushing on a lot of your pain points mm-hmm. and insecurities. And why would I want to do that unless I was cruel? And that's why this notice what you like more than what you don't like.
And understand his language. We just talked about languages. If expressing feelings is maybe not the way he does express feelings, maybe it's not verbal. So let me just say that again. Everyone expresses like how they are feeling, but maybe it's not verbal. Maybe it's not the same way you are expressing it. So maybe try making him a meal. Maybe try sitting with him and watching sports, even if you hate it. My point is, try doing something he likes to do. And it may...
Does that mean you're going to sit and watch basketball with me?
Anyways, so yes, that's the point. So try doing something they want to do.
She's at least let me have tennis on in the background.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of sitting and watching sports. I don't mind going to sporting events, but I don't like watching them. But if you do something they want to do, you're now speaking their language and you begin to bridge that gap. So that's just something I would just throw out there. And one of the things I talked about yesterday was about the last tip I gave was about forgiveness and grace. Because that was the last tip I gave and it's so important. So one of the things it was so helpful to me because my minister actually said this. He said, so many people, they are dating and they're so blinded by love drugs that they close their eyes to all the things that they know are wrong, but they don't want to see when they're dating. It's like, oh, it'll get better. It'll get better. How many of you have said that? Oh, it'll get better. As soon as we get married, it'll get better. When we have kids, it'll get better. And they choose not to see the things they know they should be seeing, but they don't want to when they're dating. And then they get married and suddenly their eyes are wide open. So their eyes are closed when they're dating and then wide open after they're married and then they're just irritated all the time and they're bitching about it all the time. This is the wrong way to do it. It's backwards, right? Your eyes need to be wide open when you're dating, even if it's not convenient for you, even if it's hard. Notice all of those things, be brutally honest, and then when you get married, close your eyes halfway. Right? Then you need to be like, all right, now I need to practice love. And now I need to practice love. By the way, love is a practice. It's a daily practice, not just a feeling. You're not just waiting for someone to buy you gifts to be loving. You need to practice it. Forgiveness and grace on a daily basis.
You're so smart.
Not about that, but.
You're so cool.
But I learned that and it was really helpful to me.
Grace and forgiveness. And there's a wonderful technique Tana and I teach called reach for forgiveness. So recall what happened. Empathize with the other person. Get in their head and try and understand why it was the way it was. Altruistically, give them the gift of forgiveness. Commit to it and then hold on to it, as opposed to so many people we see at Amen clinics is they hold on to the hurts and they're masterful at that. If your relationship is really struggling, sometimes a can be helpful to understand. We've both seen each other's brains and we've seen lots of brains of people that we care about. Sometimes it's the missing link in relationships. If you can't do these relating strategies, then something else may be going on
head injury
that could be blocking it. Person has ADD, there's a head injury, you have mold in your home, someone has Lyme disease. It could be all sorts of things. But to be happy in a relationship, responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness, time, special time, I love that. I'm going to request more of it. inquire into the negative thoughts you have, notice what you like, and grace and forgiveness.
And one last thing, someone said, I think they said it's something about being in an abusive relationship. Should they still keep their eyes closed? Of course not. If it's you have to be able to draw healthy boundaries. I think that's actually one of the tips. Right.
Is so important.
Forgiveness,
you need
but
to have
boundaries.
Clear boundaries on what's acceptable and what's not. Be able to express it, and if someone hurts you, you need help.
Right.
Like right away. And you know, one of the sad things is if you grew up in trauma, it is often normal.
It normalizes it.
So the brain doesn't do what's good for it. The brain does what it's used to. Mm-hmm. And if it's used to being under chronic stress, then you're going to find someone where your relationship is under chronic stress.
Right.
And that's the work that both of us have done so that we didn't replay our traumas from the past.
Yeah.
We hope this is helpful.
Leave us comments. We are going to save this. People have been asking, but all the comments from here are going to disappear. So please leave comments, questions. It really helps us,
Well, there's one more question. How do we know who's at fault? And I would just switch that to what is it I can do today to make this better? Because if you're looking for blame,
if you're
and
focused,
you talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, if you're focused on fault.
It's the number one self-defeating behavior that I see. It's blaming other people for how your life is turning out. Now, if the relationship isn't working, it's okay to be honest and say, this isn't working for me. But you always want to stay in the position, what is it I can do today to make this better? Because I know how to make her scream at me. I could do it in 5 seconds, but I don't. Why? Because I'm responsible for my behavior to make this the best relationship.
Well, and the healthier you both get, like if you're getting help and you're healing your trauma, you tend to want to take action and responsibility. And it's like, what was my part in this? So rather than going, what was their part in this? Why are they to blame? It's like, what was my part in this? And you're clear about what their part is. We're all clear about what someone else's part is. The harder thing is to go, what was my part in it? Right? And how can I make it better? Just like you just said.
Right. And again, that's not if somebody's abusing you, belittling you, hitting you, shaming you. That stuff is just not okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.